So in the Tallman video, I had a person tell me about a house that haunted the hell out of the family, and the family previous and the family after. And I just wanted to get any information that I hadn't heard, and this nice lady who won't name was up for it. And so this is that conversation. So we had a good talk last time, and you told me great stories which spanned the tenants of 3 generations almost of houses, you know. And things that stood out to me were, a lot of them were around the sink and in the kitchen, you know, feeling watched at the sink, and previous tenant put into a home due to seeing things, window scratching and voices. Your husband went back and he heard talking from the sink area.
Yes.
Have you any clue why that would be a focal point?
I haven't got a clue because the kitchen sink wasn't there. It was a chimney breast because the room was very dark. It had a very small sash window to the side of the house. And when you walked in, it was dominated by a chimney stack.
Because I was wondering whether maybe you'd disturbed some ashes spread or something very relevant, but doesn't sound like it.
We never found anything.
What other stories can you tell us? What's come to mind since talking to me?
Oh. Well, I sat down and I wrote a list of the things I told you.
Yeah.
And the rest of the things I didn't tell you.
Yeah.
The tall figure, he was involved with my neighbour as well. They hadn't moved in very long, and they had a large piece of ground on the side of the house. It was to the front of our house, but it was on the side of their house. And they bought the house so that they could breed some dogs. They had Great Danes and Beagles, and they were going to breed those dogs. She used to let the dogs out on an evening. They hadn't been there very long, and let them run around in the garden and then bring them in last thing. This particular day, they were telling us a few days after that she was chased up the garden by a figure, and her husband put up like big spotlights in the garden. And when we kind of spoke to them about who chased them in the garden, that was when it came out that she said it was just a very tall person with like a cloak on and a hood. She said I couldn't see their face, but he was so tall. And she said, and he just came from the bottom down by the hedge and just come rushing up towards her. And she just ran inside.
Yeah.
And after that, they put the big lights up down there because they didn't know what it was. They described it. It sounded like the figure.
Yeah. But that sounds like our man, doesn't it? Our tall man.
Yes. Yes, it does.
So still no answers as to where it came from, but like you say, it operated in the area rather than one specific spot.
There was a lot of things that went on that. It was like a corner. There was, if you can imagine the main road, if you like, it was only a quiet road, but the main road went along in front of the cottages, and then it went round quite sharply to the left. But there was a small road that was at the bottom of our garden to the right that went straight up to the common. And that was like a dead end. And all that corner, there was things happening because we saw my husband and the dog saw something. I stood right with them. I didn't see anything, but the dog definitely saw something. It was the first one to see it. Well, his hackles went up and he ran over. We were talking. It was a nice pleasant summer's evening, and it just got dark. We were talking with our neighbours over the hedge, which we used to do a lot, and their dog started to bark. She said, oh, they'll settle down in a minute, but they didn't. So she went to shut them in the house and to see what was going on. She came out and said, oh, I don't know what it was, she said. Something wound them up. And then our little dog started going nuts and ran over towards our gate, which was right round the corner from where their part of the garden was growling and barking, really, really not happy, and she wouldn't shut up. So my husband went over to see what was making her bark, and he just stood there. And the dog just stood by the side of him, and they were looking in the lane, and they were there for quite a while. And I said, oh, you know, I'm going in now, and I'm going to go and see what they're up to. So the neighbour disappeared, went in home, and I wandered over. They were just stood there, and I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I just saw a woman walk up the lane. The lane was a dead end. He said she went up there. And I looked, and I said, well, there's nobody there now. He said, no. He said, she walked back down past us. He said, you must have seen her. And I said, no, I didn't see anybody. And I said, what was she like? He said, well, she was very tall. And he said she had like a white flowing dress on. I said, okay. I looked at her, but she took no notice of me or the dog. He said she went to the end of the lane where it was blocked off, stood there, then turned around and walked past them straight down to the corner onto the road. And I said, where is she now? And he said, well, she's gone round the corner. I said, show me, because I had a feeling I knew what was going on. So I said, show me. So we walked to the end of the lane, and you could see right down the road, and it was well lit. I said, can you see her? And he said, yeah, she's there. And I said, where is she? He said, she's there. He said, she's walking by the side of a man who is walking a dog. And there was a man walking his dog. And I said, there's nobody there, just the man with the dog. He said, but she's there. And then he went, oh, she's gone.
So did he think he'd seen a ghost or not?
He couldn't figure out what was going on. But I've been told that previously, nothing to do with seeing ghosts or anything. Our friend had lived in the area since he was a child. And when he was a young man, a young teenager, he used to go out with his friends, especially on the weekend. And they'd have a bit of fun, go and have a few drinks, and then they'd all make their way home. And he said, I can remember, he said, old Mrs. Elisha jumping out, frightening us to death. She used to do it on a regular basis. I said, who was that? He said, well, that's one of the ladies that lives in the cottages now. That was her mother. He said, and she lived up in a cottage just up on the common. But he said that when she got older, she went a little bit, she had dementia. And he said, you'd be wandering home on the night after you've had a few drinks with your friend, he says, and out of nowhere, this tall figure dressed in a white nightie would just seem to appear from nowhere saying, where's my son? Where's my son? And he said, frighten the life out of you. He said she seemed to kind of come out of nowhere, wandering around. And he said you used to say to her, turn around and say, he's back in your house, go and see him in there. And she's wandered up, but she was always out there wandering around in a long white nightie. And she always had a cigarette in her hand. And my husband said the lady had a cigarette in her hand.
Right, yeah. Just a very high population of spirit activity, it sounds like.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Definitely going on in cottage next door where the neighbours were.
So you don't maybe suspect that your house was the focus, because your son says a tall man looked through his window from the outside.
Yeah.
Your roses were picked outside, you know.
Yeah.
Your broomstick outside. So maybe you were on the edge of it nearby, you know. Maybe it's nothing to do with your renovations.
No, it could have very well been the area.
Yeah.
Because I was also told nothing to do with the house, but I was just informed that there was some woods, like a small copse, and there had been in the past a lot of witchcraft had gone on there.
Yeah.
And it just seemed to be extremely active.
Yeah, I wonder what the history of the actual area was. It's perplexing.
I tried to find some information. Yes, there was a lot of witchcraft. But other than that, I know that there was a lot of mining went on there.
Eventually, things are getting worse. What were sort of the final pushing points of you thinking, we've got to move?
I lost a child.
Yeah. On the stairs, when you fell?
Yeah. And I was on bed rest, first of all. And it just didn't happen. And we lost the baby. And then when we came home, that was when friends and also the elders at the church, they wouldn't even let us go inside the house. They made us wait outside while they went in and collected some belongings for us, because they just felt it was too dangerous for us to go in. They collected a few odds and ends. One of them was actually chased out of the house. We had to make do with what we had, and we just all bundled into the car. We came back to my parents, and we waited. We were there for 6 months with the house on the market, but even that didn't go to plan. That was strange, because the house was finished, albeit it needed a little bit of decoration here and there, but everything was basically new and finished. It sold straight away. But then we had a message, I don't know whether I told you it before, we had a message from the estate agent saying it was sold, but the buyers pulled out. We said, any specific reason? Because I was waiting for him to say there was something in the house. He said, no, your neighbour told him that he was going to be up to the early hours of the morning with bright lights on, making lots of noise. So the buyer pulled out.
Weird.
And I thought, why on earth would he do that?
Yeah.
So anyway, we decided then that we would come back home, back to the house. And the first evening, the neighbour came round. We got on very well with the neighbours. Never had any problems with them at all. Opened the door and he just stood there. And he said, I thought I should come round. We invited him in. And he said, I suppose I should apologise. And we said, why should you apologise? We acted dumb, if you like. We weren't happy, but we weren't outwardly nasty or angry. We said, why are you sorry? And he said, because I stopped the sale of the house. And we said, why? And he said, I don't know. He said, I don't know why I did it. And we said, well, we've still got we've spent a lot of money, and we've now lost our buyer. We don't know what we're going to do next, and you've made us come all the way back home, and the boys have had to come out of school, and we're here. And he said, I suppose I should get a solicitor. And we said, why? He said, well, you're probably going to take me to court. And we said, no. And he was like completely shocked. We said, it's not worth the hassle. No, we're not happy, but we're just a bit like dumbfounded. And he just said, I'm sorry, and he left.
How weird. It's a real Wicker Man village.
It really was odd.
Yeah.
We weren't angry, we were just exhausted and fed up.
You had a house to go to, and I remember you saying you reclaimed the house.
Yeah.
But that your husband went back and heard the whole get out getting louder and louder.
Yeah.
And then the next time, it must have been frightening for him to go back in and think, the last time I was here, I had a frightening experience.
Yeah. None of us wanted to go back in. It was, I tell you, I was on YouTube, as I said before, all these years, I've been trying to find some kind of an explanation or an answer to explain what went on. So I'm still looking, still trying to find something. I was on YouTube, and I like to watch people renovate houses. I'm still interested in that. And there was a couple in Wales. They found a farmhouse, and it was what they called, this is what we've been looking for, a piece of land so that we can have a few animals and grow some food for ourselves and have a nice get away from the city kind of attitude with the children. And we're going to renovate this old house, double fronted with a porch. And I kept thinking, I want to see inside. I want to see inside. And when they eventually opened the front door, oh boy, the feeling that I got, I really felt it strong. It looked the same. And I just felt like saying to them, don't do this. Don't do it. You don't know when you're going to wake up.
So it was your house, or your old house?
No, it looked so much like it.
Yeah.
Even now, and it gave me goosebumps.
Yes, the memories, yeah.
Because of what it was like. It was a lovely house to look at. Friends and relatives used to love coming down to visit because it was different. It was big, compared to a little semi. We put an awful lot of hard work and money into it, and yeah, it was an absolute nightmare as far as I'm concerned. It was, yeah.
I remember you saying that the cottage was built to house maybe a relative of the previous family. They were going to live at the bottom of the garden in their own little cottage.
Yeah, it was, there was a rank of cottages. It was about 5 or 6 cottages. The very last house, they built the house in the back garden at a right angle because it went round the corner. And there was a piece of common land on the front that was eventually just adopted as the garden, and also the side garden to the first cottage.
And because you eventually met the previous tenant, didn't you?
She was pointed out to me across the road, and I just thought, that's not a lady with dementia, which is what her family thought was going on.
She got better, didn't she?
Absolutely. And yet she ended up losing her home and going into a care home because of what was happening in the house.
And so were there any other protective spirit moments where you felt like something was watching over you, helping you?
No, not her.
You just quietened down, that was enough, I suppose.
That was enough. We had 2. Well, I felt that it was quieter, and my husband did. But afterwards, my eldest son told me, no, Mum, it didn't go away because he was still experiencing things, but not telling me. And I'm sure my middle son never talks about it. He just flat will not talk about it. Things go missing. There was a case of a levitating clock. The neighbour, the people that took the house on after us, they had a problem with somebody being lifted up and moved. There was just a lot of crazy things went on there.
So things would go missing and then you'd find them again?
Yeah.
In weird places, I imagine.
Well, I had a lovely little gold wristwatch. I was very, very proud of it. I wore it all the time. I used to take it off and put it on the bedside cabinet on an evening. And then when I woke up, I put it back on again. And one morning I got up and it was gone. And I looked everywhere for that watch. I looked everywhere and I couldn't find it. I kind of forgot about it. I thought maybe it turned up. I didn't think something had spirited it away. I must confess, I just thought, what have I done with the watch? Have you seen my watch? Keep your eye out for my watch. In the bedroom, because we were doing so much work here, there and everywhere, I still had china that hadn't been unpacked in a big tea chest. And I used to clean around the tea chest because it was too heavy for me to move. When we did get to move it, about 18 months later, right underneath it was my watch.
That's strange.
Still ticking.
Yeah.
And yet, the weight of the tea chest alone, you would have thought would have broken it. But
Yeah.
it didn't. It was still going.
Yeah, well, I've heard of that. I mean, I've witnessed it myself. Things go missing and then turn up right in front of you. Or where I was sat a minute ago. And it's like, well, I wasn't sat on it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Where did that? How did it get there?
Yeah.
Where did it go?
It's usually, it seems to be usually like a sign to say, hey, notice me. You know, they wouldn't move things that you don't notice go missing. They move the things you need, your keys, your watch, you know.
Yeah, your phone, and it was right there. I always put it in basically on the edge,
Yeah.
closest to me. And it was almost like a feeling of, I can get this close to you, and you don't even notice me.
I remember you telling me about your husband waking up and that woman, or, well, we don't know what gender, breathed sort of a noise in his face and it freaked him out.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been hard sleeping for the next week or so in that bed.
He was going through, neither of us had very good nights, but he wasn't kind of well at that point, if I can put it that way. He seemed to be all over the shop. Yeah, one night he would be awake, and then another night he would sleep like a log. It would be like one person would be wide awake and you would experience something, and the other person would be absolutely like dead to the world. They wouldn't hear things going on. Somebody could be shouting for you in one bedroom, and you'd sleep right through it. You wouldn't know that anything had gone on.
I wonder if you'd ever heard your name called and it wasn't the person calling you.
I moved out of the way for people when I thought somebody was behind me. Literally moved out of the way, and there's been nobody there. That was a really, really strange feeling. You know, you can feel that somebody is in your space, if you like.
Yeah, I get you, yeah.
And you feel like I'm in the way. I thought I was in the way of my husband, and I stepped out of the way, and nobody was there. I had an incredible feeling of being watched. And again, that was in the doorway of the kitchen.
Yeah, the kitchen again.
That seemed to be quite a place, because the people that had the house afterwards, they were sat at a breakfast bar right by the kitchen door. That was where their friend was levitated off a chair through the door and left the house, and they left at that time, and they said they would never go in the house again.
Yeah, I think that's the second time I've ever heard a story of someone being levitated off a chair.
Yeah.
Immense amount of force.
That was a lot of force, and it was a female, and it really, really scared her. And her husband refused to go back in the house afterwards. He said, "We'll never come back to the house. Well, you come to us." It was quiet for 2 years, and I remember I just suddenly had this feeling. I wasn't in the same room as my husband, but I suddenly had the feeling like a weight had been lifted off of me. And I went into the front room, and I just said, "We can sell the house." And he just said, "Yeah," he said, "I'll see if we can put it back on the market." And the board barely went up, and it was sold. And that was it.
As easy as that.
Just a mutual feeling we suddenly just had, that we just knew we could sell the house.
Well, I'm glad you got out, but yeah, searching for answers is just something that I think anyone would... It's an itch that hasn't been scratched for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I just wished that I tried to find out more when I was there. Although I think I was just scared of everything.
Yeah.
Then fighting to ask anybody anything.
Yeah.
Just a few close friends. Some knew a bit of the history, but not of the house.
Did they believe you in general then?
No.
Like your mum sort of didn't believe you and apologised, didn't she?
Yes, she did. Her face, I see her now, she was stood in the sink.
Yeah.
And she just looked at me, and it was like, oh, my God, you were telling the truth.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, because you told me to tell you the truth. I said, I wouldn't tell you stories like that.
Because you were an adult as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but it seems so far-fetched.
Yeah.
I don't kind of broadcast to everybody. Funny enough, my stepdaughter, she came over to visit, and I don't know how we were just generally talking.
Yeah.
I can't remember what she said, but I said to her, "Oh, go on YouTube, Whitehouse Investigations."
Yeah.
For the tall man. "Oh," she said, "that sounds interesting. What's it about?" And I said, "Well, have a listen and see what you think."
Yeah.
And she texted her dad, and she couldn't believe it. And she came over today, and she said, I can't believe that you kept that to yourself all these years." And I didn't know about it. And I said, "Well, it's not something that you kind of shout about it." Yeah, but I don't know whether people are frightened of what they're going to hear. But they straight away kind of say, "Oh, she's nuts. She's a little bit cuckoo," And I think also I don't want that label. So I suppose I'm a bit frightened of being labelled as being nuts. But I know these things happened. And yet there's still a lot of people that unless you actually experience it, you can't explain it to somebody else what the feeling is like.
So tell me more about this levitating clock.
It was, I was on bed rest just before I lost the baby. And I had to have help in the house because my husband was working. And I had two young boys that had to go to school. So I needed somebody to help me. So my sister came down to help. She was with the boys. We just bought, because we kind of finally finished off the kitchen and we were putting up finishing touches. So we bought a kitchen clock. So it's a brand new clock. And we put batteries in. But we hadn't actually put it up on the wall in the kitchen. So it was in the windowsill in the front room. Below the windowsill there was a couple of chairs, easy chairs, and then there was a coffee table, and opposite that was a settee. And my sister came back from bringing my boys home from school, put the television on, and I think she probably made a cup of coffee or something, brought it up to me. Went back down and sat with the boys, and all of a sudden there was a bit of a noise, and they all came running upstairs. Told me the clock had just levitated across the room. She was sat with the boys watching the children's program after school, and she said the clock lifted up off of the windowsill, and it came across the room steadily, not fast. It steadily came hovering across the room, went above their heads, hit the wall, and then dropped onto the settee, and the batteries popped out, but it didn't break the clock. I put the batteries back in, or I did. I got up, I put the batteries back in, and the clock still worked. It just floated across the room, hit the wall quite gently, and then fell on the settee in between them. And that was when they just jumped out and ran upstairs to me. And what can you say?
Well, that's it. Did your sister already know you potentially had something then, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because I don't know whether it was a few nights before or a few nights afterwards, but they'd had a very, very bad experience in the bedroom she had with the boys. And it was like I said, a double-fronted house, so there was 2 bedrooms opposite one another upstairs, but the doors facing one another. She slept in my youngest son's bed. My youngest son slept on the floor. My eldest son was in the other bed on the other side. We were in bed asleep, all of us, and then I don't know what happened. We didn't hear a thing. We did not hear anything. We slept right through it. That's what I said to you about things happening in one room and you don't hear a thing.
Yeah.
She said she woke up and she said it was Jeffrey woke her up, my eldest son, and he was screaming, shouting, help me, help me. And she said he was just like cowering on the bed. And she said, I asked him, what is it? It's okay. She thought he was asleep. And he said, it's on the bed. And she said, there's nothing on the bed. Wake up, wake up. And he was awake. And she said she went over to him and he was climbing. He was so scared. He was backing up the bed.
Yeah.
And going up, standing up and trying to get away from something that he could see on the bed.
Yeah.
He said he could see a head on the bed.
That's always going to be a tricky one, isn't it? Because, you know, the sleep paralysis and... Oh, maybe if he'd seen stuff or the boys had seen things, it's in their psyche as well, and, you know, maybe some of these things were, you know, in there. They saw things genuinely, but then it would be in your mind, wouldn't it? You know, I'm not discounting the fact that he saw something as well.
It freaked her out. It frightened her terrible. The way he was acting was the way of somebody that was absolutely frightened to death.
Did he not say that was a tall man? That was just sort of like some other thing?
He just said there was a head.
A head, yeah.
Just a head, and it was coming towards him on the bed. But she said there was nothing there. And she said he was climbing up the wall to get away from it. And she said, and I was calling out for you and calling out for you. But she said, he never came. And she said, I was too scared to do anything. And she wasn't a kid. She was a mum. She was a grown woman.
Yeah, and you never heard a thing?
Anything at all. We both slept right through it. And I think it was after that that she kind of said, I want to go home. Can I go back home?
So bizarre. Things calmed down, you moved fine, nothing followed you, you're happy where you are. At least it's a good ending.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. When I read or listened to the story of Elf and Elk, I just thought, wow, that's very similar.
Yes. They're really outlier cases though, both of yours, you know.
Yeah, they're crazy, absolutely mad. The house is still occupied. I've looked at it on Google, and it's, yes, it's still there and it's still being occupied. If it was derelict, then I would tell you where it was, but I would never go inside again. Whoever's there, they can, or whatever is there, they can keep it.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you for phoning me back up.